That's how you know we weren't hot.
Right.
Remind me to tell you how uncomfortable Josh and I had Jordan the other day after the show. You got to remind me. Will blow your mind. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NBA Deeper Dive. A little 3-game action here. Very happy to have all of you guys with us. Going to be a fun one. Friday, heading into the weekend. I already threw some bets out on the Twitter. Bunch of them, as a matter of fact. Going heavy today. Basketball, baseball, everything. Going to have some fun with that. But we got Adam Scherer with us to break it all down. A little DFS action. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D. He's Adam Scherer. Ship my money, DFS. Hey, feeling, brother? Happy Friday. We're almost there.
Yeah, happy Friday. Great weather here. I assume it's probably good weather by you too. Been a nice day so far.
Yeah, I did. I told you. Josh was saying he'd never done yard work in his life, but I actually like it. I mowed the lawn. I mulched today. That was nice. No shirt either. Just getting the nice April tan.
Yeah, no, yeah. I hate yard work though.
It's not bad, man. You throw the AirPods in and you just, I'm telling you, it's people in chat who have done it, like who do it. Not a huge yard though. If you have a huge yard, I'm out. But like if you have a just regular size yard, it's kind of nice. It's kind of,
once in a while cutting the grass, like when I was at like my parents' house, like cutting the grass once in a while would be nice, but normally I would just rather do anything else.
Yeah, man. Well, maybe one day you settle down, you find yourself a lady, you get married, and you're out there mowing the lawn, mulching, pulling some weeds.
Half the reason that I live in an apartment is so I don't have to deal with any of that shit.
Yeah, that is the benefit. But I'm telling you guys, it's actually not that bad. It's not that bad. Just stay hydrated. It's kind of nice. David Eckenrode or Rody or Rod, he gets it. He gets it. Yeah. Oh, Adam, and a beer on you get a beer or two out there? Yeah. That's right. Anyway, Jorge, shout out to Jorge, man. Before the show even started, Jorge just gifted 50 memberships. So we love you, man. Appreciate it. 50 memberships gifted. If he gave you one, it's all random, but make sure to say thank you to Jorge because he's the man. Always looking out for people in chat. Last thing before we get started, we got 550 people watching. We just kicked this off. Get over, 100 likes out of the gate. That should be no problem. Should be no problem. If you haven't done so yet, take a single second. You know the drill. Atone for your sins. Wash yourselves clean of that stench and appease the YouTube overlords here. You know how it works. And we forget. That's cool, but I'm reminded. Take a second. Hit that thumbs up. Let's talk some basketball. I'm watching, I told you before the show, the new Top Gun movie, and I just recommend everybody check that out. It's so sick, dude. You're going to watch it. You got to tell me if you like it or not.
Yeah, I will definitely watch that before I watch whatever that other movie is you keep telling me to watch.
Hell or High Water? No, yeah, you should watch Hell or High Water first because that's one of the greatest movies ever made. And then you should watch the new Top Gun. I don't even like typical movies like that. I went into Top Gun with kind of low expectations. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'll say that's not the kind of movie that I would like expect you to recommend.
Right. But it's kind of sick because it's like fighter pilots and stuff, I love war movies. It's not really a war movie, but it's good. It's cool. Kevin said it's cheesy. Yeah, dude, of course. It's predictable too, but it's fun. That's a fun movie. That is a fun movie.
So are you calling it a good bad movie or
no? Okay. No, it's cheesy in the sense that like it's not Saving Private Ryan. Dudes aren't getting their limbs blown off like every like it's not insanely dark and serious the whole time, but it's good. A lot of people don't like it, but I thought it was good. But it's kind of predictable. And Mike, if you're going to say it, get it right. It's Shaving Ryan's Private. It's not Saving. If you're going to go with that one. And if you're doing that, make sure to use Manscaped, 20% off, free shipping. All right. Yeah. Jarhead. All right. Basketball, but last question. Favorite war movie. It's my favorite genre, by the way.
As you were naming movies, I realized how bad I am at watching war movies.
Oh, dude, if I were in your position and I get to watch all of them again, I'd be so happy.
Yeah, so I couldn't tell you like the last war movie I watched. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen Saving Private Ryan. Really sure I haven't seen Jarhead. Haven't seen Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker's sick. So good, man. Jeremy Renner's.
I don't think I've seen Black Hawk Down.
Danger Close is a newer one. That's good too. You have them all at your
yeah, and that's a genre that I don't actually know why I haven't watched them. Like it interests me. Like when you like start telling me to watch like westerns and shit, I don't watch them because
It's not a Western.
I know, but you have told me.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like stuff like that. I'm like, I know why I haven't watched it. Like, I'm just not interested. But yeah, I actually don't know why I haven't seen a lot.
And if you haven't seen Band of Brothers and the Pacific, the mini, someone said they're better than. Someone said they're better. Don't watch Pearl Harbor. That's dog shit. But someone said they're better than any war movie in chat. They are. Like, they're awesome. Maybe other than Saving Private Ryan, but watch them all. Yeah,
good call, Josh. I have seen Tropic Thunder.
Watch them all. Watch them all. They're so good. All right. Everyone, the Full Metal Jacket. It's good. I can't get into those older movies.
What the hell does Adam watch then? I don't really watch movies. Comedies, if I do.
I thought Band of Brothers is better than the Pacific, but they were both very good. I would recommend watching Band of Brothers first. I watched it like 4 times, and it's a 10-part miniseries. It's that good. Today's show presented by No House Advantage. Got 3 games to dive into. We'll kick it off with the Celtics. By the way, thank you. Got well over 100 likes here out of the gate, so we're in good shape. Boston -5, Atlanta 228 total in this one. Boston just a far superior team, Adam, no doubt about it. They took each of the first 2 games. They travel to Atlanta now. You know, worst case gentleman's sweep here. I really wouldn't be shocked at all if they just come in and handle business and they're in and out in 4 games. But when it comes to the Boston team from a DFS perspective today, a lot of interesting pieces. I think it's only reasonable that we start with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Tatum get 33% ownership. Not great leverage score, but I think we can kind of provide some nuance here with him and Jaylen Brown. Let's kick it off with the 2 top guys. Then we can work through some of these cheaper options.
Yeah, I mean, Tatum and Brown just obviously look the best from this team. They're both reasonably priced. Tatum just shy of 10K on DraftKings, only 8,300 for Brown. Like you said, not positively leveraged, going slightly over-owned, but nothing too crazy there. 25% chance of being optimal for Tatum, 26% for Brown, 34% ownership on DraftKings for Tatum, 28% for Brown. They're both just going to look really good. Good matchup against Atlanta. You don't have a lot of, I mean, you do have a lot of high upside players on this slate, but like you have the New York Cleveland game where sure, you can go to a lot of those guys in tournaments, but they're just not going to project as well as the Boston guys facing off against Atlanta. Atlanta guys are facing Boston, which is a tough matchup. You just don't have a ton of guys that are going to look great to pay up for. So Tatum and Brown both, I think, look very good.
Okay. David Porter said, they're great if you enjoy death and destruction. Always one wet blanket in the bunch. I like to call it reality, David. It's a sad reality of this world we live in. You can shield yourself from it, but it doesn't mean it's not happening, pal. All right, let's talk about Robert Williams, Derek White, Marcus Smart, Brogdon. It's funny, once you get down past the Tatums and the Brown, and Tatum's in a tier of his own, Williams and White and Smart and Brogdon, you're all just talking about guys, like any of the guys that have ownership. Williams we can talk about. He only played a little over 22 minutes last game off the bench, but these guys are all in this like 5K to low 6K range. White 6,100, Smart 58, Brogdon 52, Horford 56. And then you just get down to guys that aren't really going to see minutes. And if they do see minutes, they're likely not going to see enough to be viable down in that 3K range whatsoever.
Yeah, it's really interesting looking at them in the boom bust tool because, we talked about Tatum and Brown being slightly over-owned. The rest of this team, at least on DraftKings, projects to be under-owned by at least a little bit. On FanDuel, that is also the case across the board pretty much. So it looks like a good tournament team, from an ownership standpoint outside of Brown and Tatum. Obviously, Brown and Tatum, again, look very good in their own right. But Robert Williams, like you said, played around 22 minutes last game at 4,500. That's not bad. He's a good point per minute guy. I don't mind that price tag. Derek White's played extremely well through the first 2 games, averaging like 1.2 fantasy points per minute. You're not expecting that to continue, but he does have a 23% usage rate. He's averaged 36 minutes per game. He's still only $6,100. Marcus Smart at 5,800. Still likely to play mid to upper 30s. Played 32 last game, but obviously can play more than that. Malcolm Brogdon played about 16 minutes, I think it was, in game 1, but then followed that up with 28 minutes in game 2. He's the type of guy where, when he's really popular, you would kind of want to stay away from him, but he's only pulling 16% ownership. He's a very good point per minute guy. He's a very good player. Like, I think more often than not, you're going to get those upper 20s games from him as opposed to 16 or 17. So all of these guys look good in tournaments, even if they're not, top priorities.
Yeah. Ooh, I mean, if you get down to Porter, or I'm sorry, if you get down to Al Horford, reading chat here, and you look at that leverage score, 5.5%, optimal 14%, only 8% ownership right now. How many minutes, first of all, are you projecting for Horford today at a mid 5K price point?
I expect around like 32.
32. You think you get over the field on somebody like Horford?
I mean, I'm only playing cash, so maybe. But at 8%, I do like him in tournaments. We have him with a 14% chance of being optimal. The playing time's there. The production is obviously hit or miss. It's not like he's a priority offensively for this team. Through the first two games, he's only at 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. He only has a 7.5% usage rate. So the playing time has been awful, or the production rather has been awful. But the playing time's there. He's averaged 35 minutes per game. Played 32 last game. Didn't close that one, so could have played more. At that price, I'm still willing to go to him and just hope that he bounces back and gets a little bit more done offensively.
What do you make of the Atlanta Hawks today, coming into a game where they desperately need a win, but they're still climbing an uphill battle? 5-point dogs at home. At the same time, though, you got DeAndre Hunter, who had a really solid game last time out, specifically the first half. I think he doubled in the first half, but he had a monster game for, at his price point. He hasn't budged. He's still sitting at 4,700, played 38 minutes in that one. And then you've got the discounted Collins, Onyeka Okongwu. It really is interesting to me for a 3-game playoff slate where usually you're getting like at least some of these like mid-range or higher priced guys with some ownership. The highest owned players, all three of them at 30+% today, are 4,100, 4,400, and 4,600.
Yeah, really interesting pricing on Atlanta. On DraftKings, DeJounte Murray is like the only guy that I would say is like correctly priced. You don't look at his $8,100 salary and say, oh, wow, that seems cheap. Everybody else, they're getting a pretty sizable, Boston discount basically. So you look at the cheap pieces. DeAndre Hunter played 30 minutes in game 1, but he lost about 5 minutes to foul trouble in the first half. Followed that up with 38 minutes in game 2. He's getting a bunch of ownership, and he looks like he should. He's clearly a good value. John Collins at only 4,400. He's had his issues this year from a production standpoint, but pulling 34% ownership, 28% chance of being optimal. He's coming off of a game where he played about 30 minutes. He's closed at center in each of the first 2 games as well. So not that you're getting a lot of minutes from him at the 5, but any minutes he gets there, are more productive than when he's playing alongside Capella or Okongwu. So just a really, really cheap price tag on him. Both of those guys look like good pieces to build around. Okongwu's cheap at 4,100. I think the center position here is just really interesting because Okongwu's 4,100, Capella's 5,400. Yes, there is a good chance that neither of them close, but even if they combine for let's call it 44 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. Last game, it was about 46. One of those guys is very likely to pay off that salary. Like if you get 24 minutes from Okongwu, like you did last game, it's very likely that he's a really good play at 4,100. If you get 20 minutes from him, like you did the first game, and you get 26, 27 from Capella, it's hard to think he doesn't beat a $5,400 salary. So it's very likely one of those guys has a good game.
Okongwu is north of a fantasy point per minute guy on the year. It's really at this point just a matter of yes, the matchup makes this a less appealing spot. Can we really even predict the playing time for Okongwu and Capella right now? It feels difficult. I don't think this is just 24-24 or 28-20. I think it's just the direction of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with who's playing well also. I think expecting something like 25-26 for Capella and 20-21 for Okongwu makes the most sense to me.
Okay. How do you want to approach the top tier guys today and pretty much everyone else that we didn't mention, but specifically Trae Young, DeJounte Murray coming off 2 solid games as a scorer. Bogdanovich we can get into as well. And then Capella, but really these 2 top tier guys. Any interest in a very low owned DeJounte Murray or 17% Trae Young?
Yeah, so Trae Young's minutes are really interesting to me. Josh and I talked about it after game 1 where Young played just shy of 35 minutes. And it was we saw that rotation and it felt weird to, project him for that few minutes, but then he played 33.8 last game. If he plays well, I assume he's going to get more playing time. He has a 32% usage rate so far, 31.7% assist percentage, but he hasn't shot very well. 23% from three through the first two games, just over a fantasy point per minute. If he's knocking down shots, I assume he gets more playing time, but it's still kind of weird that he's played so little through the first two games as is. DeJounte Murray's playing huge minutes. And I think that you're seeing, when you look at those price tags on DraftKings, I think you've seen them sort of adjust for the playing time through those first two games. Typically, anytime like during the regular season that Trae Young was going to be $300 more expensive than DeJounte Murray, you would feel very comfortable going to Young first. But based on the playing time we've seen in those first couple of games, it's kind of like they should be similarly priced. DeJounte Murray's just played, playing more minutes than him. He's playing really well. He also has a 29% usage rate, nearly a 28% assist percentage, averaging 38 minutes per game. So I'm interested in Murray at 9% owned just because, if you get 38, 39 minutes from him and he continues to be close to a 30% usage guy, that's really appealing at low ownership on a 3-game slate. Similarly, 8,400 for Trae Young is one of the cheapest price tags we've seen all year. Clearly, it's a tough matchup, and he hasn't done anything in the first two games to give you any confidence, but it's still Trae Young. It's still somebody that can just go out there and, destroy a slate. So at 17% ownership at a very cheap price tag, it's still interesting.
How much do you think of this as Quinn Snyder being like, limiting Trae Young's minutes? Well, the one of them was did he lose him in a blowout? Because while that game doesn't look like it was as far apart as it was, that was a massive blowout. I'm wondering.
Are you talking about game one?
Game one.
I mean, he closed. He played 34.7 minutes. Murray played 36.
Yeah, what I was saying, I'm wondering if he closed, but potentially lost minutes because they didn't cut it to 13 because it was 32 points midway, like a few minutes into the third quarter. I was thinking maybe that they started to make mount a bit of a comeback that he came back in, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, like they already had Murray, Capella, Collins, Hunter, and Bogdanovich.
Right, that's a good. Yeah, you're right. Right. When you say he closed, for anyone that's not looking at this, he played the last 2 minutes, but it's
right. Yeah, he subbed in for Capella with 2 minutes to go, and they went with the lineup with Collins at the 5 that they've used to close each of the first two games. But yeah, like I see I get what you're saying, but it's not like you had the second unit play a bunch of minutes and then the starters all came back.
Yeah, it was the starters. You're right.
Right. Like they came in except for Trae Young.
I wonder how much of it is like Quinn Snyder going, he's shooting terribly. He is certain spots, he's a defensive liability.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. If Trae Young is not getting it done offensively, he's a liability on the defensive
Massive.
End. And the Celtics have, obviously they have Tatum and Brown, but like they have guards that are good too, with Derek White, with Brogdon.
They're stacked.
Right. So like I don't think it's crazy to think that, Young could just easily play 34 minutes again. If he's making his shots, he could easily play 38. So I'm still interested at a low price tag or at low ownership at one of the cheapest price tags you've seen on him this year. But there is certainly reason to be concerned with what we've seen through the first two games.
Absolutely. Anybody else you want to touch on for Atlanta?
I think we talked about everybody.
I think so too. All right, let's keep it going here. And hey, shout out to Hannah and shout out to Malachor for gifting those subs. What's that, like 60 gifted subs today now? Beautiful thing. Jet Wayman, using that Stokastic sub, that free member for 14 months for a free super chat. Band of Brothers is great. Thanks for the content. Yes, it is. Agreed. And you're welcome. Thanks for watching, man. All right. Nice. All right,
I didn't say anything about Bogdanovich or Bay. I saw somebody mention Bay. Bay is 4K. In tournaments, if you just want to roll the dice, fine. He played 24 minutes in game one, only played 14 or 15 in game two. Hasn't really done anything, but you can at least there's at least a path for him to, if he plays well, pick up more minutes. So I wouldn't have any confidence in him, but 4% owned on a 3-game slate. At least it's a way to be different in tournaments. Bogdanovich pulling 12%. That's probably about correct. 5,100. He is likely to be in the closing lineup. The John Collins at the 5 lineup does mean that Bogdanovich should also be out there. 28 minutes in game one, 33 in game two. So I think that he's, a decent last piece in type guy.
Let's talk about Cleveland and New York, though. Before we do, shout out to No House Advantage. You know what they got over there? Play against the house. 21 extra entry fee. How do you beat that? You don't. You're just building essentially parlays. I don't know. They want me to call them that, but that's pretty much what it is. Except in this case, you don't have any juice on either side. So you're just taking player props, the over or the under. So like on certain books, say DraftKings, you could see 5.5 assists on DeJounte Murray, and the under is -150. But on No House Advantage, you might just get DeJounte Murray 5.5 assists. We have all the tools for it too, on the Pick'em Pro and all that good stuff to help you win money there, give you the top bets, just sort by X win percentage, and you're in every single time. It's the easiest way to find the right picks, the best picks every single day. And you're just building them out. You're picking your favorite player props. One, you could do 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to do 4, 11x? Sure. You want to do 3 to 5x? Okay. Or 5, going for the holy grail to 21 extra entry. You're getting a $100 first match deposit bonus when you sign up, 100% deposit bonus up to $100. You got all the tools over at Stokastic.com to help you piece together the best cards that you're going to be able to piece together and save yourselves a ton of time. And they also have the pick'em format where you're just playing against the field and you're building essentially lineups, but with no salary. You're using player props. And in the pick'em format, they're the softest props you're ever going to find, hands down. Like you can legitimately build amazing lineups. The only thing is, you will get duped, so you got to be careful with that. Check it out though. Worst case scenario, you don't love it, but you get a $100 first match deposit bonus. So you got free money coming to you and you play through that, or you win a bunch of money. But I think you'll like it. All of our tools, and it's, like I said, 21x if you hit all 5, nohouseadvantage.com. Link in the description, link in the chat. So check both of those out if you're not over there yet. All right, let's go with Cleveland. I want to see Laffy on the Lex Freeman podcast. That'd be a great episode. Oh, they're so long though, man. Now he's an interesting guy. Cleveland, and Adam listens to Lex Freeman podcast every day.
Sure. I don't even know who that is.
I know you don't. Cleveland, and I mean, I don't expect everybody to know who that is, but
I also don't know when the last time I listened to any podcast was.
No.
I don't really listen to podcasts.
I love podcasts.
It's really probably like a pretty big, it's definitely a pretty big like life leak that I don't listen to them, but
they're so good, man.
Yeah.
I don't really watch TV anymore. Like once in a blue moon, I'll watch a movie and then I'll watch games. But aside from that, usually I just like watch podcasts on YouTube. But yeah, get into it. You're missing out on a lot. You got so much ahead of you. You should be excited for what's in front of you in life.
Yeah, just I can check out all the podcasts, all the war movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And Hell or High Water, of course. And the new Top Gun. Okay. Cleveland, New York Knicks. He is fascinating, Hugo. I agree. New York Knicks hosting the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll get into the Cavs first in this one. The minutes that you're seeing for some of these guys are just outrageous. Like, yeah, I understand that that Mitchell only played 39 last game, but the guy lost over 3 minutes in a blowout. He was on pace for 42 after playing 43 or 44 the game before that. And then the other interesting wrinkle, Chetty Osman, by the way, participated in shoot around. He is questionable, but he was at shoot around. Isaac Okoro played 2 minutes, got 2 quick fouls, comes off, never saw the floor again, Adam. And Karis LeVert played 40 minutes off the bench.
Sort of off the bench. He started the second half.
Well, you know what I mean. Like he started the game off the bench.
Right. So curious to see what the starting lineup is here. I think there's a good chance they go to LeVert. Played 40 minutes, like you said, started the second half, played the entire second half with the exception of 1 minute. So if he starts, you're likely getting a ton of playing time from him. Even if he comes off the bench, he looks decent at 4,700, but if he starts, you can certainly feel better about his playing time. Okoro's at 3,400. If he's coming off the bench, I don't have any interest. If he is still in the starting lineup, he's clearly extremely, extremely, extremely risky, but you could take shots at him if you want to. But yeah, if LeVert starts, he looks good. We had Danny Green in the rotation last game. Not somebody I really want to play from a fantasy standpoint, but like these secondary guys on Cleveland are very difficult to project confidently right now.
Morant participating in practice.
That's good.
Game time decision. We'll see how that one goes. Yeah. Mitchell too. I mean, if Mitchell's going to be playing this many minutes, and listen, I understand 3-game slate. It's the postseason. A lot of these guys are going to be playing a ton of minutes. It's not just Donovan Mitchell, but What type of priority do you put on him, if any, today, assuming that we're going to keep getting these huge minutes from him? Because he's only pulling 15%. He does have a positive leverage score in our boom bust tool, 19% optimal, 15% ownership. I understand too that at the price point, it makes things weird. Josh and I talked about it this morning. You look in that, we'll say upper mid range, like the 8 to 9K. You have Jamal Murray, you have Randall, you have Jaylen Brown, DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, Anthony Edwards. And then it jumps up, 93, 9,900 and 10-7. Are these guys, and you can talk about Mitchell too, tougher to get to on a slate like today?
Yes, they are, and that's why you're seeing the low ownership, but it makes this game and both sides of it, I mentioned this in my NBA article, just a really, really interesting tournament game. I wouldn't say that there's like one true priority from this game where you're just like there's nobody from this game that I know for sure right now would be in my cash lineup, for example. Not to say that I won't have anybody from this game. I haven't built it yet, but like there's nobody I'm looking at it and saying like this guy's definitely a top play, but there's just a lot of guys that are projected to go a little bit under-owned. Optimal percentages are pretty much across the board, a little bit higher than ownership. And it's just because they are at sort of awkward price points where they're not overpriced, but there's just other plays that look a little bit better for more appealing games at pretty much everybody's price point. But you're getting a 15% Donovan Mitchell averaging 41.5 minutes per game at 15% ownership on a 3-game slate. Like that's really appealing to me. Darius Garland hasn't been very good from a fantasy standpoint through the first 2 games, about 0.95 fantasy points per minute, but you're still getting huge minutes at 7,400, 22% owned, Mobley at 7,100, Allen at 6,700. Just given the minutes that these guys are playing, last game you got 35 from Allen, left about 2.5 on the table because of garbage time. Mobley played 39, left 3 on the table. Yep. Garland was at 36, didn't play his final rotation. So I think the upside for these guys is massive, even though from a median projection standpoint, they just come in a little bit behind other options.
Nicholas said, I know this is a DFS show, but I have to ask a betting question. Do you think Cavs Knicks first quarter under 54 looks good? I actually went over to OddsShopper and looked for you. It's the best place to go if you're actually looking to see if something is a legitimately good bet or where to find it. We have it minus 1% XROI. So it's basically a neutral bet. Like it wouldn't be a recommended bet on OddsShopper, but if you are inclined to bet it, DraftKings has minus 115, whereas FanDuel is minus 128. DraftKings looking like one of the best spots to get there if you wanted the under, but as of now, it just seems like a completely neutral bet, maybe slightly minus EV. All right. Where else do we need to go to with this Cleveland team today? Is there anywhere else that we should be diving into? Are there any things that you like? If Okoro starts today, what do we assume? Just that he's going to play decent minutes?
If he starts today, he's playing somewhere between 1 and like 30 minutes.
Exactly. That's a big issue.
I mean, it's the type of spot where, if he comes off the bench, I'm fine just completely ignoring him. If he starts, I would certainly pay attention to his ownership. Like if he starts and people just start jamming him in because he's really cheap, I think you can just go a different direction. Hope that either he plays normal minutes and sucks because he's Isaac Okoro, or that he just loses minutes again. But if you get him starting and he's 5-6% owned, which I think is likely after what we saw last game, he does become an interesting tournament play because they would like him to be out there defensively. Clearly, it hasn't really gone. It didn't go his way last game. The game before that, he got elbowed in the face. So I think lost a few minutes for that. Ended up playing 22 total in that game. But there's at least, like, if he starts, it's at least a situation where if he plays well, he will stay on the floor. And assuming he's low owned at 3,400, I would have some large field tournament interest. If he's popular, then I'm perfectly fine just getting away from him. And again, if he comes off the bench, I'm not interested at all.
And it also massively affects LeVert as well, because
right,
as far as LeVert goes, I know he's not expensive, but you really need all the minutes you're going to get, or that you can get from him, because you're talking about a player who's not exactly a per minute monster. On the floor this year with Mitchell and Garland, he has a 13.5% usage rate. His rates with those guys are not 0.66 DraftKings points per minute. You need all the minutes you can get with him. And if he's coming off the bench, it's like, okay, fine. Maybe you get some minutes without those guys, but how many if Mitchell's playing 43 or 44 minutes and Garland probably plays 40 or so today as well?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're not getting the super productive Karis LeVert. He's at 0.7 DraftKings points per minute through the first two games. And it's for the reason you said. We saw this during the regular season where he would step into the starting lineup and, if it was replacing Mitchell or replacing Garland, you could expect him to be close to a fantasy point per minute guy. If he was stepping into the starting lineup playing alongside Mitchell and Garland, he's like a 0.7, 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy because he's just not going to get enough shot volume and he doesn't do much of anything else. So from a point per minute standpoint, you're not going to expect a lot out of him. But if he's starting at 4,700, you're just expecting him to play a bunch of minutes and still get there.
Anybody else for Cleveland? Let's go. I think we're good, right? Unless
so all I was going to say was, and I kind of mentioned it at the beginning, Danny Green, Chetty, Okoro are all so cheap that there's a decent chance one of them actually has a relatively decent game at their price tags, and none of them have any ownership. The problem is just that I have no idea which one it's going to be. And none of them are great point per minute guys anyway. Like, I think Chetty is the one that I would go to if Okoro's coming off the bench. I think Chetty's the one that I would try first, but I, again, just don't really have confidence in it. It's just a situation where at the end of the night, it wouldn't be surprising to just see one of those guys having a game.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just like you said, it's a spin of the wheel at this point. You just don't really know.
Right.
How about the Knicks? How about Julius Randle being 9,700 in game one, which admittedly is probably too expensive, especially in this matchup, down to $8,200 today. He's 14% owned. So I want to try and reconcile the salary here with the ownership and get your thoughts. Hopefully you can help everybody out, give them the right direction to take on this one. Cause 14% owned, 15.8% optimal score. Let's just start off with the Knicks with Randle now that his price has dropped considerably over the last two games.
Yeah, I like him in tournaments at this price. We haven't seen big minutes in the first two games. Game one, if I remember correctly, he had some foul trouble. So you could certainly argue that he lost minutes because of that. Game two, he played 33 minutes, lost 2.5 minutes to garbage time, but still 35 and a half minutes isn't really what you're expecting out of Julius Randle in the postseason. I think it's likely that you see his playing time increase as the series goes on, but he's averaged 1.13 DraftKings points per minute in the series. So it's not like he's been bad from a point per minute standpoint. He has a 34.8% usage rate. So he's been extremely involved offensively. It's not like the Cavs have had any success like stopping Julius Randle from shooting or anything like that. So I am pretty optimistic because we have seen him play relatively well. We've seen him remain extremely involved. And I think there's just a chance that he gets more playing time going forward. Even if he plays 35 minutes at 8,200, he's somewhat interesting. I think the reason that the ownership is low, though, is that you have so many good guard plays to go to in this price range, or a little bit cheaper, a little bit more expensive. I think you're going to see people paying down quite a bit at the forward spots. You also have, Evan Mobley, for example, on the other side of this game, $1,100 less, playing 40 minutes, give or take. So I understand why the ownership is low. And that's why also, you only have a 16% optimal chance for Randle, but he's just somebody where I still think that there's some volatility in those minutes. Like, before this series ends, I fully expect we see a game where Julius Randle plays 38, 39, 40 minutes.
Yeah. Me too. I wonder how much of it is because of the ankle. I mean, he wasn't even a lock to play in game one.
Right.
He was pacing 36 minutes last game, right? That's not bad. He lost, 35 minutes, I guess. He lost around
35 and a half.
35 and a half, yeah.
Which is fine. It's just not what you're expecting from Julius Randle in the postseason.
And especially under Thibodeau.
Right. Like 35 and a half is like the low end of what he would play most regular season games.
Yeah, that's super strange, man. And then in game one, just look at some of the rotations on him. They weren't his normal rotations at all. And I don't think he was in foul trouble.
If I remember right, he was early in the third quarter.
You sure?
Actually, no.
I don't think he was, dude.
So he subbed out after a foul, but it was still only a second.
Right. So I'm not sure what the only problem is, and 36 minutes is nice, but how many of these other comparably priced guys are pretty much locked into 40 or more in a close game?
Right. That's why you're getting the low ownership is
right.
You can't project 40 for Randle, but I think it is important
to play it.
Right. I think it's important to keep in mind that it's not like it would be crazy to see that happen.
Which just kind of makes it more interesting. Obviously, It's a shitty matchup, but what about Brunson?
Yeah, I like Brunson the most from this team. I don't think Cleveland really has a great answer for him. He's obviously really good. He's still cheap. He's playing big minutes, 32.5% usage rate through the first 2 games, 1.2 DraftKings points per minute, 27% assist percentage as well. The problem for him is that there are a lot of good guards on this slate, and this game does still have a total like 10.5 points lower than the next lowest game. So those things are working against him, but he does still look good at this price tag, and he is the first guy I'd want to get to from the Knicks.
Once you get past guys like Brunson and you get past Julius Randle, then you're looking at, the Isaiah Hartenstein backing up Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson around 6%. This team past the top 2 guys, unless you're talking about maybe some Hartenstein at 3,800 just because he's at the center position and it's easier to accumulate stats in fewer minutes and he's super cheap. Do you look to a Quickly in tournaments? Do you look to a $5,300 Josh Hart or a Mitchell Robinson or an RJ Barrett at 6K?
I think Emmanuel Quickly in tournaments is really interesting. His rotations have been kind of weird through the first 2 games. Like in game 1, he played almost the entire first half. He subbed in. Jalen Brunson got in foul trouble, picked up 2 fouls, and Quickly subbed in for him and played the entire rest of the half. Now, I don't think, so obviously he benefited from Brunson foul trouble, but then in the second half, he played a total of like 4 minutes. In game 2, so he ended up at, 24 minutes, but it was just weird rotations, benefited from Brunson's foul trouble. Game 2, he played more normal rotations. He played about 7 minutes in the first half. Then he played the final 15, 16 minutes of the game, got up to 23 minutes. He hasn't shot well in this series, though. And obviously, there's no guarantee that he starts shooting well tonight. But so far, 16.7% from 3. If he gets hot, he can just stay out there and play more minutes. So the fact that he's not getting any ownership, I think makes him interesting in tournaments just because we always like low-owned guys that sort of control their own destiny. Like if Emmanuel Quickly is just out there knocking down his threes, I have a hard time thinking that they're still just taking him off the floor. So he is interesting to me in that regard. RJ Barrett is more expensive. I think more difficult to get to. Likely to play low to mid 30s, but I think he's a little bit more difficult of a sell. Same goes for Hart. Robinson and Hartenstein. I mean, Hartenstein's 3,800. If you want to go there, I think it's okay. Played 27 minutes last game. In game 1, he played 22 minutes. You're likely getting 22, 23 from him. So at 3,800, I think he makes some sense. Robinson's, I think, a little bit more difficult to get to at 5K.
Quickly is especially in a playoff game like this, he's your prototypical fire or snowflake emoji and nothing in between.
Right.
Like if he gets hot, as you pointed out, Tibbs would be ill-advised to just take him off the floor in a matchup where you're, 2.5 point dogs, crucial game, tied 1-1 in the series. If Quickly's just knocking down shots, he's probably staying out there. In the event that he isn't, then you're just going to close out of you're going to stop looking at your Quickly lineups.
Right, exactly. He's the perfect example of somebody that, if he were pulling 10, 12, 14, 15% ownership, it would just be like, yeah, okay, this isn't really interesting because there's a good chance he's not going to be very good. The reason I think he is interesting is you think about like who is guaranteed minutes for the Knicks, and it's basically Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, a center, some combination of Robinson, Hartenstein, but those final 2 spots are going to be score dependent and who is playing well dependent between Barrett, Grimes, Hart, Quickly. They can run a lot of different combinations, different iterations of lineups with those guys. And it makes it so you can feel relatively comfortable, I think, that if Emmanuel Quickly is playing well, he can get those minutes because it's not like, let's say Obi Toppin, right? Let's say Obi Toppin plays well. He can still only play so many minutes because they're not going to play him alongside Julius Randle typically. There's nobody just straight up blocking Emmanuel Quickly in the rotation if he's playing well because they can go to so many different lineups that contain him.
For sure. And yeah, thank you for the correction, Julian. Cavs favored by 2, 1.5 now, but yeah, Cavs favored. Knicks favored.
Yeah.
Getting backwards here. Knicks at home favored 1.5 now, but yeah, you know what I meant. All right. Anybody else you want to get to Denver and Minnesota here?
I mean, Grimes is really cheap. He's not a great point per minute guy, but he's 2% owned. So don't hate it in tournaments. Kind of a similar play to Quickly. I think Quickly's got the higher ceiling, but Grimes is also cheaper.
Ghetto Farmer Boy, love it, man. Member for 24 months using that free super chat. 2 years today. Thanks for a fun and profitable run. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate the support. That stuff goes a long way for us. And yeah, if you guys are looking to join us outside of just YouTube, a lot of ways to do it. You got 50% off any subscription right now across the board. Whether you just want baseball, because our baseball tools are absolutely dominating right now. You just want NBA. You want everything, hockey, basketball, baseball, UFC, NASCAR, PGA, all of that, all of our tools, ownership, all of the, top fighters tool, top golfer tool, top ever pitchers, top stacks, you name it. Fantasy Cruncher add-on, you want to grab that. Player projections, 50% off. If you want to do a week, you want to do a month, whatever subscription it is, you go in there, you pick it, 50% off. We do it because we think you guys will win. We think you're going to be profitable and it's going to help and you're going to want to stick around. Premium Discord is in there as well. So take advantage of it. Link in the description and in chat, 50% off whatever you want. And if you're a low stakes player, only playing a few bucks a day, we got something for you too. We built this specifically for this purpose. The lineup generator, first week is less than $4.50. Links down there. Jordan, you can throw that in chat. You can swap players out. You can lock players in, generate as many lineups as you want, upload them to CSV. If you want to import them onto these sites, it's optimized for mobile too. So you can just save them and then plug them in. It's really sweet. Even if you're playing a couple bucks a day, the lineup generator, you guys have seen the unsolicited endorsements in chat and the Hall of Fame segments. Like lineup generators working awesome for people. So are the MLB tools. Did you see Eddie Lai took down the 100K like 100K in back-to-back days? And then our CEO, Tom Kennedy, just took down like 150 last night or something.
Yeah, Steve won last night too.
Steve won last night? Yeah, tools are firing on all cylinders right now. 50% off everything. Like I said, lineup generator too, less than $4.50 for your first week. Well worth checking out if you haven't done so yet. Denver. Oh, and our chalkboard is free. Always. All our picks, all the conversation, great community. We're north of 1,500. That's always going to be free. So if you're looking for a place just to hang and chat with like-minded people and sweat bets and DFS lineups together with people that love doing what we do every single day, and you don't want to have to be, restricted just to a YouTube chat a couple hours a day, join our chalkboard, man. Join it. We'd love to have you guys there. And a lot of you are there already. It's been an awesome time and a great community. All right, let's talk about Denver and Minnesota. Yeah, I was looking at Jamal Murray, and I'm thinking, remember the bubble season where he was just dominant? Of course you do. Yeah. This guy his averages in the postseason, even dating back to like the 2019, 2020 season, or the 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020. That was the bubble year. And then to start off this year with like a 34% usage rate. I don't know what happens to Jamal Murray in the postseason, but this dude turns into a fucking stud.
Yeah, he's been amazing. And obviously you expect him to come back to earth at least somewhat, but
sure. I still took over 22.5 points today.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities are going to be there for him. Like Denver needs him to step up. That's the thing that I really like is Denver can't win in the postseason solely on the back of Jokic, and that's not a knock on Jokic. It's just they're not going to. You need Jamal Murray to be this guy. And so
the same thing this morning. He's the X factor in this team right now.
And so it makes me a little bit more comfortable going to him and expecting him to at least get a ton of opportunities, because it's not like he's a guy where like he shot really well the first couple of games. So Denver, was like, yeah, okay, whatever. We'll ride the hot hand. Going into games, Denver is planning on Jamal Murray being this guy because they need him to be this guy. So at this price tag, I still really like him here. 8K is very, very reasonable. 20% ownership is not that high. 25% chance of being optimal on DraftKings. You mentioned it, 33.5% usage rate through the first two games. Jokic has a 27% usage rate, 34% assist percentage. Murray has about a 34% usage rate, 30% assist percentage, just shy of a 1.5 fantasy points per minute so far. Again, you're expecting the point per minute production to come back to earth at least a little bit, but at $8,000, you don't need 1.5 fantasy points per minute from Jamal Murray. If he does that, you have to have him at that price, but it's not like you need him to replicate those stats to be worth 8K.
Yeah, he's just been so. I saw you tweeting about Edwards the other night too. What a fun battle that was between Murray and Edwards.
Yeah, those two are really fun.
It's awesome. But yeah, dude, Jamal Murray right now at that price, like you said, and if this is a close game, he averaged in the bubble year, he averaged 40 minutes per game through 19 games played in the postseason with Michael Malone as his coach.
Right. And he played 39 last game.
Yeah, exactly. So you could see that, the 38 to 40, essentially every game here. What do you want to do with Jokic today? At that price point, it's never easy.
Right. It's just one of those, if you can get there, great. I think it's tough because we haven't had any value plays that we love. I mean, you have the guys on Atlanta where, you're paying down for Collins, Hunter, maybe going to a Kongwu. People are using Isaiah Hartenstein. So there is some value, but this isn't like yesterday where you have, the Warriors without Draymond. It's not like, when we had Milwaukee without Giannis and Memphis without Morant. Value is a little bit more difficult to come by today, but clearly, if you can get to Jokic, great. He projects 6 points higher than the next closest guy on the slate, which is Tatum. He looks better on DraftKings. We have about a 24% chance of being optimal there compared to 15% on FanDuel. So I think that just speaks to it's a little bit easier to get to him on DraftKings. But yeah, you love to get there if you can. It's just that you have a pretty strong mid-range here where you have Murray, you have Brunson, you have Mitchell, you have Brown, you have Young, you have Murray. Like there's so much upside in those guys that I think you're going to get a lot of lineup builds that you just like a little bit more if you forego that one extra cheap value piece and go more balanced. But clearly it's kind of a situation where like, if any of these value pieces or multiple value pieces like truly go off, you probably need Jokic to win. But if they're mediocre, there's not a lot. I mean, outside of dropping like 70, 80, there's not a lot that Jokic can do at that point. Like if Jokic goes for 60, he's projected for about 58. If Jokic goes for 60, if Collins, Hunter are just, sort of average, Chetty, Okoro don't do anything, Hartenstein doesn't, blow up, then you're probably going to have been better off going to lineups that are, more balanced. But if one or two of those value pieces actually go out there and get you 35, 40 DraftKings points, it's going to be really hard to win without Jokic in that case.
For sure. And Bruce Brown, he's pulling 30% right now, highest owned on this team. We'll get to KCP in a second. I do wonder what Bruce Brown's minutes look like if nobody's getting into foul trouble, right? Because he kind of benefits from several of these guys if they get into foul trouble. You saw MPJ get in foul trouble. Aaron Gordon was in foul trouble twice. Like, is there a reasonable projection you're giving to Bruce Brown today for minutes?
I think expecting around like 26 to 28 makes sense. The nice thing about Bruce Brown is that if anything goes wrong with anybody,
he's the first guy out.
Right. Like you're basically getting a 6-man rotation here from 7-man rotation. Jeff Green played 26 last game too. But like
Christian Brown also benefited from Gordon being in foul trouble.
Right. But like Christian Brown played 7 minutes. You're basically getting like a 6 to 7-man rotation where Brown is the 6th guy. But if Porter, Gordon, KCP, Murray, any of these guys get in foul trouble, Bruce Brown is the one stepping up and getting more playing time, at least to some extent. So I expect on average, him to play 26 to 28 minutes. He's not a great point per minute guy, but he does have guard and forward eligibility, which is nice. He's sub 5K. He's projected to go a little bit over-owned, but also he's just somebody that is going to help you, round out your lineups, kind of regardless of what type of build you're going with, because you can fit him into so many roster spots and because he's relatively inexpensive.
All right. What about KCP?
He should play a ton. It's KCP. So obviously, like, what you get from a fantasy standpoint is up in the air. They're not looking to him to be a great scorer or anything. His job is to play defense and then hit the open threes that he takes. But at 4,200, likely playing upper 30s in this game, there is still value there. Similarly to Bruce Brown, he is projected to go a bit over-owned, and his optimal percentage is lower than Brown's because he's only shooting guard, whereas Brown is point guard, small forward. So there's just fewer ways to get Caldwell Pope into your lineups. So projected to go a bit over-owned, actually projected on DraftKings to be the most over-owned guy on Denver, but it's still a solid value piece on a slate where you don't have a ton of value that you're going to feel confident in.
I want to get over to the Minnesota side because there's some really interesting stuff to get into, but wrap up Denver here. Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. They seem like just kind of fine plays here, but I'm not, and like Jeff Green's pretty tough to get to even at that price point. He is getting 10%. I think, if Aaron Gordon stays on the court, because Aaron Gordon was pacing pretty significant minutes last game. And not only that, but you also had a situation where First game, he was in foul trouble multiple times too, and it blew out. So like Green did benefit from that. What do you think of these guys today outside of, Brown, KCP, Jokic, and Murray?
So Green is just, I think, pretty much correctly owned around 10%. He's clearly been the seventh man in this rotation. If Gordon gets in foul trouble or Jokic gets in foul trouble, you can see more Green. But also, he's just really cheap at 3,500. So I think that ownership's pretty much correct. Gordon and Porter are guys where it really just ends up depending on what kind of build you're going with. They're going to be pretty useful pieces if you're going a little bit more balanced because they're not super expensive. They cover the forward spots, which are a little bit more difficult to find good plays at today. And they have upside. They're both good enough offensive players where they can step up if needed and have big offensive games. But I don't think you're building around them because in most of your, as priorities, because in most of your like top projected builds, you're going to be going cheaper at forward, going down to guys like Collins and Hunter. And then it's going to allow you to get up to the Jamal Murray, Jalen Brunson type guys at guard. So it really just depends, sort of how you're building your lineups. But if you are going more balanced, I think these guys at least give you nice ceilings.
On the Minnesota side, we'll get to Edwards. I actually want to start with Cat just because he's very popular today. He's coming off just two terrible games, some foul trouble in one, blowout in the other. What did he score? Like 11 and 10 points in these first two games?
It was something like that. It was awful.
Yeah, not good at all. But he's $7,500. If you have any chance of competing, Cat's going to have a big game. Like you can't rely on Rudy Gobert to do what he did offensively last game. They still lost with a 40 spot from Edwards. Also, Denver, for what it's worth, they are a much, much better team at home. They were like a 500 team all year on the road. They're still, better than Minnesota, but this game only has like a 2.5 point spread. I don't know. If Towns isn't in foul trouble, he's on the floor. I expect to see big minutes. I get it, 7,500 why he's so popular.
Yeah, so do I. And the rates are really good for him in this series. The issue is just the lack of production. Like you said, though, Denver not as good at home. It's a big home court advantage there. I mean, you are talking about playing in altitude in Denver. It's not like it's just like they have a rabid fan base and they win a lot of games there. There's an actual physical reason that they're so good at home. So it is, I think, a big deal that you are getting back to Minnesota here. The playing time has been there, and the opportunities have been there. In the two games he's played, he's only averaged 0.88 DraftKings points per minute, but he has a 28% usage rate and a 20% rebounding percentage. The rebounding percentage really stands out to me because, a 28% usage rate obviously is good, and it means that he's going to have a high ceiling and the ability to score. But I'd be concerned if you were just seeing, Rudy Gobert grab 1 million rebounds and Cat not really be involved there. But Gobert's got a 19 to 20% rebound percentage. Towns is at 20%. So he's not one-dimensional from a fantasy standpoint. He is getting rebounds, 10% assist percentage. So he's, somewhat involved there as well. He's shooting 25% from three, 29.5% from the field. It's just very likely that things turn around sooner than later for him. And you're getting a price tag where they don't even have to fully turn around. You don't have to get back to Karl Anthony Towns giving you 1.4 to 1.5 fantasy points per minute like you get, you're getting in previous seasons from him. Just get to like 1.2 and you're probably going to need him at 7,500.
I agree. Yeah.
And this is another reason he's another reason too. We haven't talked about him yet, but this is another reason why, an $8,200 Julius Randle is only 15% owned is that 8,200 is cheap on Randle, but 7,500 on Towns is just absurd.
Yeah. Power forward center. You're absolutely right. We got a couple minutes here. We'll turn this one over to live before lock after this. Just, you know what? Go ahead and I'll turn it over to you. Break down the rest of this team because there are some nuances to Minnesota today. I don't want to take up any time because we only have a couple minutes.
Yeah, I mean, massive ceiling, obviously, for Anthony Edwards coming off the game. He had 62 fantasy points on DraftKings. Shooting guard, small forward, 25% owned, 25% chance of being optimal. Through the first two games, he has a 31.5% usage rate. Also has a 30% assist percentage. So obviously like getting to him if you can. One spot that I think is really interesting is Taurean Prince at 3,700. Don't know what the starting lineup's going to be here, but I assume you're going to get Prince back in there. He only played 18 minutes last game, but that's because he was in foul trouble, ended up picking up 5 fouls. If he avoids foul trouble and is playing relatively well, I think it's still likely that you're getting mid-20s in minutes from him. And at 3,700 on a slate where you don't have a ton of good value, and he's only pulling 13 or 14% ownership, I think that makes him look really, really interesting. If he does get in foul trouble, you're likely to see Nickeil Alexander-Walker step up and play more minutes. So not saying you can only roster one of them, but between the two of them, there is a lot of upside there and just not a lot of ownership. 13 to 14% coming into Prince, 4 to 5 coming into Alexander Walker. You're probably getting a combined 44 minutes or something out of those guys, somewhere in that ballpark. At least that's what we got last game. So at the cheap price tags, I do like getting to, at least one of those guys in tournaments. Kyle Anderson should give you, 28 minutes or so off the bench, 5,700. He is projected to go under owned. I think he's risky just because I don't have a ton of confidence in him, exceeding 30 minutes or anything, but we do have him with a 20% chance of being optimal at only 12 to 13% owned.
Who's your favorite value play on this slate right now?
So I mean, how cheap are we talking?
Well, so I think sub 5K makes sense, right?
Yeah. Probably Hunter.
Yeah.
Hunter or Collins.
Hunter's got the guaranteed minutes too. It's nice to have that in there. If you're paying up to the top, have you built any lineups yet? I know you said you're just playing cash. No. If you're paying up, how hard do you think it's going to be? And we'll close with this, to try and build around guys like Jokic today. Like Tatum is one thing, and I know that Jokic isn't egregiously expensive given what he's usually priced at, but he's still in a tier of his own.
Right. So I don't think it's difficult in the sense that, like, you're not going to have to play guys that, are going to play 4 minutes, might play 4 minutes or something. It's not like you need to go to you don't need to go to like Chetty, Okoro, Noel type guys to get to Jokic. So it's easy to build those lineups. The problem is going to be that they're going to look very, very similar to everybody else that builds the Jokic lineups. I think it's going to be difficult to build like relatively contrarian Jokic lineups, because once you put Jokic in on DraftKings, you have $5,614 per position. You're just going to essentially then be going to some combination of like John Collins, KCP, Hunter, Brown, these sub 5K guys, because clearly you're going to want to get also to, something from the Towns, Murray, Jalen, Mitchell type range. So I think you're just going to end up with like really, really similar lineups. Whereas if you skip the Jokic piece, you get a lot more leeway in what your roster construction looks like. You could go like really balanced where you're kind of living, trying to get big games from guys like Porter and Gordon, Porter and Gordon, and like you're giving up Collins and Hunter, like hoping that they have mediocre games. You could still go to the Hunter Collins pieces, but then, get an extra one of the Jamal Murray, Edwards, Brown type guys. I think you get a little bit more flexibility without Jokic, which is what I think is interesting.
Okay. Love it. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy the night. I'll be sweating some stuff in chalkboard with you if you want to come join us. Link down below. Everything's free. Greg will be in there too. We've had a great time with these playoffs and even some baseball action as well. Follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS. Me at Laffy_D. Shout out to Jordan Klein for producing this one, and stick around. Live Before Lock coming up next. Peace. Yo, you know what time it is. It's that time of week again. Yeah, Stokastic Hall of Fame time. Giving out some free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 action there to a lot of you today. And getting you inducted into the Stokastic Hall of Fame. What's better than that? See your name up there in bright lights. Also get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. You're trying to get your name up here, trying to get the month. All you got to do is go to stokastic.com/avatar. Download that profile picture right there, stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at StokasticHOF. Stokastic Hall of Fame with a screenshot. Maybe you want to say something nice too. You don't have to, but if you want to, that's cool as well. And get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and we'll do it each and every week. Let's get it started. Now, a man who he's with us here at Stokastic. We got to shout out our own guy here, Steve Buzzard, because what a monster week we saw from Steve, using and repping the Stokastic MLB tools. Pumped MLB is back, and this is the Colts, by the way. 2 tips to win all the money this year. 1, the MLB tools from Stokastic are hands down the best in the industry. 2, always be sure to make at least one lineup stacking the Dodgers. That's the first 100K from Steve. Then we got 3 days in a row from Steve, 50K. Mixed in there was another 100K, and I believe a live finals qualifier ticket as well. Shout out to Steve, absolutely repping Stokastic in a huge way over the early stages of the MLB season. And Dave as well with the Stokastic avatar. Second place in the four-seamer. Love the top stacks tool. Hell yeah, man. Glad to see it work for you. $2,500, second place for Dave. Followed up by Calvin. Use the Masters promotion to give the PGA lineup generator a try. Yeah, first week, $4.48. Can't beat it. Help me get one birdie away from taking it all. Had the old avatar, just updated to the new one. Hopefully I can still get my free money. Yeah, we got you, man. We got you. Thank you guys for all the insightful content. Congrats, dude. That's awesome to see. Using the brand new PGA lineup generator. And Lisa, been a good start to the MLB season. Thanks to Stokastic, plus a bonus of the free month. Yeah, Jujubee, you've been up here before. $500. First place in the mini max all day. We'll take that. And Dave, another Dave Oliver. Thank you guys for your awesome MLB content. Well, thanks for using it. Thanks for watching us, Dave. Third, fourth, and fifth place in the Monday MLB pinch hit. Rocking another Stokastic avatar, but still Stokastic nonetheless. Get the one that says it, though, man. It looks better. XFL expert El Cuatro Loco took down the quarter jukebox last night thanks to hashtag Fade Cores and the Cubs going off in a shootout last night. Yeah, first place in the jukebox for El Cuatro Loco. Nice little $166 win there. Followed up by Andrew. Nice to get in the Stokastic Hall of Fame early into the baseball season. Best tools in the business, especially for baseball. Yeah, shout out to you, Andrew. First place quarter juke. Dude, our guys just crushed the quarter jukebox every single week. Travis Scott, I'm not rocking the avatar, so I don't expect a free month. That's all right. If you could give me a shout out, that'd be greatly appreciated. Ship the mini max, like I said, quarter jukebox, mini max. Turn the cool 75 into 1500. Congrats, man. Get that avatar up there. You don't want me to have to start talking bad about your Raptors who couldn't make it through the play-ins, man. I remember you. I remember what you said about the Sixers every single year, particularly last year when they, of course, beat the Raptors. But shout out to Travis. We like Travis here. Congrats on the $1,500 win. And Jorge, our guy, the giver of gifts in all YouTube chats. Amazing projections and right on the spot. Finally, your Phillies, Lofty. Finally. Help me out. Shout out for today's show and tips from EMAC and Digital and Terry McBride. Help getting the same lineup second and fourth in the mini-max today. Thanks to Stokastic for amazing tools. That's awesome, Jorge. You were up here last week, I think, too. What's that? $1,320-some, second and fourth place. Beautiful stuff. And then you've got Colin. We got a lot today. Told you. Shout out to Petty Theft. Yeah, a friend of the show. We like Petty Theft here, too. And Neil Orfield for being goats at what they do individually. Thanks as well as Stokastic HOF. $800. First place in the end one. The Ultimate Fight Show. Shout out to my peeps, Stokastic.com, for all their insight. Went off their recommendations, but had a few specific plays that hit. Keep up the great work. Yeah, okay. Some monster parlay wins, 25 in the almost 1,900. And don't forget our Bet Pro Tool, Odd Shopper. All that's free for the first week. You got links in the description, guys, if you want to check those out. And Ryan finished second out of 55K in the 25-cent contest last night. Great tools led to a nice bankroll booster for a small stakes player like me. Hell yeah, dude. $250 on the quarter pinch hit. We'll take it. And finally, Cohen. I was a Wiggins 3 away from taking down my first tournament. Shout out to the Live Before Lock crew. Always dropping knowledge. End one, $400, third place. Shout out to all you guys. Download the avatar at Stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stokastic HOF. Get inducted into the Hall of Fame. We'll welcome you back if you've been here before as well. And get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum.
Right.
What
What is happening, everybody? It's almost time for the weekend, but before we get there, we've got NBA DFS to talk about. So as you guys come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are sponsored today by No House Advantage. If you guys haven't signed up there, use the link below in the description box because that is going to get you up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And we'll be talking a little bit through NHA later on and some of the tools we have over at Stokastic.com that can help you find some good player props to play over at No House Advantage. But Neil, we've got a 3-game slate. Your Minnesota Timberwolves are playing. You've got the hat on. What's your confidence level? Are they going to win one today?
Yeah, I'm like 30% confident that they will. I'm going to be there cheering so hard. 30%.
Oh, you're going to be at the game as well?
I will be. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Except it's these stupid late games. Like, why are we playing at 8:30 local time? Usually the games are at 7. I hate that these are late games because I got stuff to do in the morning. But it'll still be fun.
How early in the morning you got stuff to do? I know you're not much of a morning man.
I am not. So my first show is at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I'm hoping to do a VOD before that show, and it takes some time to prep a little bit. So, I'll have to get up at like 8. So the game, it'll probably end at 11:30 here. It's also out in Minneapolis, and it takes a while to get a lift home sometimes. I'll probably get a drink after the game. So it's probably going to be not my best night of sleep tonight.
All right. Well, there we go. So, but you got and I think the Timberwolves very live to win the game. Very close on the spread. And I do think a lot of people underestimate how much home court advantage means in the NBA playoffs, where, it's pretty frequently worth about 3 points to the spread. So you think about it this way. If a team goes from being the road team to the home game, it's like a 5 to a 6 point spread. It makes a big difference, especially because Denver is one of the teams with the more pronounced home court advantages in the NBA. So you get a spread of this game, only 2 points Denver's favored for. Minnesota, very, very live to win. I think you should feel pretty decent about their chances to end up winning tonight. And yeah, we're going to be breaking all that down. I know Gobert's listed as questionable. Total fugazi, in my opinion. We've seen him listed as questionable for, 90% of the games over the last couple of months, and he always ends up playing.
Yeah,
so
I like that word.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything to worry about on the injury report. We're just going to play this one as is. We're not going to have to worry about, unknown starting lineups for the Warriors, which we were dealing with yesterday, which I was on the right side of. I did say I thought Jordan Poole was going to start. Now, part of that was because Gary Payton was ruled out, and so that meant that I had to mix around all my lineups anyway. But neither here nor there. We have a slate to talk about today. If you guys have questions for us, leave them in the Discord channel. One of the perks of being a Stokastic Plus Platinum member, or if you're in the YouTube chat and you have a super chat, leave your questions there, and I could answer those as well. And I'm sure you guys are going to have questions about your favorite players, 1v1, stuff like DK tiers, all of that. And we'll be answering that here. And already, right off the bat, Hannah Banana, DK tiers, please. Best players per tier and sending good vibes to all. So DK tiers. Tier 1 for me, pretty easy. We've got Nikola Jokic today. Not really anybody else, particularly playing one lineup that I'd really even consider over Nikola Jokic. Jokic tier 1, pretty clear cut. Tier 2 for me is Trae Young. If you want a secondary option, it would be Jaylen Brown. Tier 3, this is where it gets really close. We got Jamal Murray and Karl-Anthony Towns there. I lean towards Cat, but Jamal Murray also a viable pivot in that range. Tier 4 for me, Rudy Gobert. Secondary option would be Jared Allen. Tier 5, Mike Conley, and I feel pretty good about him being the alpha in that one. And then tier 6, another really close tier. I think you can make a case for Karis LeVert. You can make a case for DeAndre Hunter. You can make a case for Robert Williams. I'm going to go with Karis LeVert. What we saw last game was Isaac Okoro kind of fell out of the rotation. He started, but he only played 2 minutes. I do think there's a pretty good chance Karis LeVert ends up starting today. So we'll end up seeing how that breaks down. But just considering how the minutes broke down in that last game, Neil, and we do have Chetty Osman listed this question, but that's not somebody who's going to really massively impact this slate. But I'm curious, what do you make of the Cleveland Cavaliers when Isaac Okoro barely played last game? Karis LeVert didn't start, but did play the bulk of the minutes. How do you view the dichotomy between the two of them today? Are you going to be going heavy on Karis LeVert, or do you think Isaac Okoro gets his rollback?
I think it's most likely that Karis LeVert starts and Isaac Okoro doesn't play a whole lot. I think is the likeliest scenario. If Okoro does end up starting and he's still probably going to get like 0 ownership, I'll have interest in Okoro once again because I think there's a lot of volatility in the minutes once again. But I think the most likely scenario is Karis LeVert starts, plays big minutes as the 4th option for the team. So not exactly the best spot for him if he is starting. Like he's not going to have huge usage with the starters. But at 4,700, he's certainly going to be playable, assuming he starts. He's going to be a pretty solid play, I'd say.
And it's not like we have that much value to get to. It's not like last night where, all of a sudden there's no Gary Payton and a bunch of Warriors guys stick out. We know Norman Powell was the best value we've seen so far in the playoffs and ended up coming through in a big way. He absolutely smashed last night. So we don't have any value really of that ilk. So with that in mind, like Caris LeVert's one of my most rostered players today. But I think in general, we should start by talking about some of the value and how we're going about building our lineups today, because this is such a different slate from last night with us not having all these, safe value options that are projecting really well. So is Caris LeVert one of your most rostered value options right now?
That's a good question. So I have not run. Let me run some lineups real quick, and we can start talking about what I have and how I'm adjusting. But I imagine like he looks like he projects pretty well. He's one of the better like point per dollar plays on the slate. So I imagine I'll have a good amount of LeVert. Are you getting to a lot?
Yes, he's one of my most rostered value plays right now. Shout out to William Brown, who just popped up on my screen that he has joined as a YouTube sub. So he is now part of the YouTube squad there. But yeah, so Caris LeVert is somebody who I'm getting to a pretty good amount of, and he's popular, but it's not like he's projected for insane ownership or anything like that. We've got Caris LeVert projected for 28.6% ownership on DK. So talking about the players who are in that price range that are more popular than him, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is more popular than Caris LeVert. Onyeka Okongwu is more popular. Bruce Brown, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter. So in the 4K range, you got 5 players that are more popular than Caris LeVert, at least as far as DK goes. Over on FanDuel, it's a little bit different because Caris LeVert is 5,400 as opposed to the sub 5K price tag, but still him at 5,400 is garnering 25.5% ownership for FanDuel purposes. So let's talk. Did you get some lineups run, by the way?
I did. I just ran some lineups and got to a ton of LeVert in my first set.
Yeah,
just based on how I was projected.
Yeah, I've got a lot of LeVert as well, and just the amount I'm getting to kind of makes me curious as to why he isn't picking up more ownership by the field right now. So I'm interested to see if that changes as we get a little bit closer to lock here, which could potentially end up happening, but at least as of now, not projected to be all that popular. Who are the other cheap options that you're getting to at a good amount outside of Caris LeVert? It could be any position.
I'm getting a decent amount. Got currently 26% Onyeka Okongwu. He is one of the more owned cheap guys that I'm getting. DeAndre Hunter, I'm getting to a ton of. Robert Williams, John Collins. And to be clear, I haven't done anything to adjust projections or anything right now. This is just based on our projections, a little bit of randomness, caps on the team. I haven't done anything on my own but these are the guys that are they project well point per dollar. They fit well into lineups naturally. So these are, if you are using the projections, which generally a good idea, these are guys I'm getting to a lot of. But then, yeah, Okongwu, I'm getting a lot of. I imagine that one guy that I'm not getting to right now, who I will be closer to lock, is I don't think I'm getting a ton of Taurean Prince. And yeah, once again, we've got Taurean Prince projected for 22 minutes. I think that this is a spot where I would expect Taurean Prince to start once again. And I think that if he doesn't get in foul trouble, he was on pace to play over 30 minutes last game. So even if I project him for 29 minutes, I'm probably going to get a lot more than I am currently. He'll project fairly well at 3,700. So he's one more, but I guess not as contrarian as I expected, because he doesn't project that well for us. Other places must project him better because he is projected for 14% ownership.
Yeah, Taurean Prince, tricky in terms of the minutes, just because we've seen so many weird things that Minnesota's done. But this is your squad. You're going to be at the game today. Taurean Prince, I'm with you. I do think he's going to get another start, and I don't assume he gets in foul trouble and picks up 5 personal fouls and only plays 18 minutes like he did last time. If you look at his starts this year, 6 starts made in the regular season for Taurean Prince, averaged 29 minutes per game in those starts. So I do think that there is opportunity for him to play extended minutes. And is that kind of what you're thinking? If he's able to avoid foul trouble and assuming he starts, we're getting closest to 30 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on how he's playing. I don't think that he's a guy that they feel like they need to play. Cat is going to get 30 plus minutes as long as he's not in foul trouble. Taurean Prince isn't that level of player. If he's off, they're not, there's volatility in the minutes, but I think most likely if he's playing well, if they're keeping the game close, yeah, I think he's live to play north of 30 minutes. He played, I think 17 minutes in the first half last game. And I don't if he didn't get in the foul trouble, I think, and he was playing well. So he played well, got the minutes. I think that if he's playing well, once again, he's it's not guaranteed. There's a ton of volatility in the minutes, but I think that there is, if he is playing well, there's upside for even 34, 35 minutes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have 15% of him right now, but I could definitely be talked into upping that number as we get a little bit closer to lock here and talk through the slate. Now, some other value plays that are projecting to be fairly popular from an ownership standpoint. DeAndre Hunter projected for 39% ownership. It's really funny. Nothing has inherently changed about DeAndre Hunter from this game to last game. The only difference is he played really well last game, and now people are going to him in droves.
Yep.
So I like DeAndre Hunter. I ended up with DeAndre Hunter in about 40% of my lineups for the last slate. He played really well. And to me, like, I just don't understand why he's this much more popular today, other than just he played well last game. People want to play him today. Like, I thought he was a good value play last slate. I was overweight to him. Today, I also think he's a pretty good value play. It's just, I think the ownership for tournaments maybe a little bit higher than it should be. But how frequently is DeAndre Hunter coming up in the lineups that you've built?
I mean, a ton based on projection. So before I've changed anything, I wonder what kind of minutes we had him projected for, or places in general had him projected for last game, because he played 30 minutes in game one, and his price dropped from 5,500 to 4,500 for the last game. And yeah, he was a very good play. You and I both overweight to him in the last game, but now it's like maybe, I mean, we've bumped his projection for minutes up to nearly 35 minutes. And I imagine that's probably why everywhere bumped up his minutes. We saw that he played 38 minutes in the last game. That's certainly a possibility. So we gave somewhat of him. We didn't even bump him all the way up to his minute ceiling, of course, but maybe it's just a matter of people giving him more minutes. But yeah, nothing has really changed all that much with the play. There's volatility in the minutes. It's a tough matchup. He obviously looks good. He's 4,600. He's a guy who can score some fantasy points. He averages, I mean, not a ton, I guess. He like 0.71 fantasy points per minute. Not exactly a great fantasy producer, but if you're putting him in for 35 minutes, it'll work. Yeah, I think he makes sense just because we don't have a ton of value on the slate. I would imagine I end up close to the field at 39%.
Yeah, I am also fairly close to the field. Just it's not the same. Like, I'm way overweight to him like I was on the other slate. And the other thing too about a lot of the minutes is they're going, well, one of the reasons Hunter's minutes were volatile, the first game was a blowout, right? That was not a competitive game between the Hawks and the Celtics. Like, what was the final score? The Celtics, I think that the Hawks made up some points, if I remember correctly, in like the late third, early fourth quarter. But it was a game that ultimately, it was never in doubt. It was never really super, super competitive to the point where teams had to play their key players big minutes like we've seen from some other teams. And then game two ends up being a little bit more competitive and we see more minutes. The point I'm about to make here, Neil, is here's the game that I think is most similar to that. Your Minnesota Timberwolves against the Denver Nuggets. First couple games of the series, the second one was somewhat competitive. The first game was not at all. Considering this game as a 2-point spread, it's in Minnesota. I think this game has potential to be really close, and the starters to all be playing like around 40 minutes in this game. So this is my favorite game to get to. Final game of the slate, Denver, Minnesota. I think it could be a shootout, and we could get big minutes from a lot of the players. That is maybe a little bit hidden because we haven't seen it from the first couple of games. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I love this game too. I'm with you. I think it's going to be competitive. Timberwolves obviously need the win. They're going to have their guys out there for big minutes. So yeah, I'm going to be, of course, I'm also going to the game, so I'm biased. Like I want to target this game because I'm going to be watching it the whole game. But yeah, I do think that it is probably the best game environment. Obviously, like the Celtics have a great matchup with Atlanta, but like neither of the other two game environments overall, like both Cleveland and New York play at slow pace. Boston's such a great defensive team. It's like, to me, it's pretty clearly the top game priority.
Yeah, and it's fairly difficult to get up to Jokic with the lack of value, but he is somebody who I would like to be getting to at least at a decent clip. But my most rostered player overall on the slate right now, Neil, I think you're going to be happy when I say this, is Karl-Anthony Towns. He's popular, but I do think it's warranted. There's kind of the stink around Karl-Anthony Towns where a lot of the public kind of thinks that he can't produce well in the postseason. I saw it in our chalkboard channel earlier where somebody was like, oh, I'm taking Karl-Anthony Towns under points because he can't shoot in the playoffs. It's like, yeah, he could shoot in the playoffs. We've seen some passive performances from him at times in the postseason, but I think relative to his price tag, which is not all that exorbitant, the potential for him to be playing close to 40 minutes in this game, and then also the fact that he is a pay-up option based on his history as a player, and the price tag is just broken on DraftKings.
Yeah.
When you ever seeing Karl-Anthony Towns at $7,500, even FanDuel at $8,400, I would consider to be too cheap. He's one of the most rostered players on FanDuel, but DraftKings at $7,500. Can you remember a time that one of your favorite players is Cat your second favorite player?
Yes, probably. He's probably the player that I cheer for the second most. Like I have very mixed feelings about Cat, to be honest. And very, very far and away my number one favorite player. Cat might be number two.
Yeah. So anyway, the point I was going to make there is, can you remember a time that Karl Anthony Towns was 7,500 on DK? Because I can't.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it's way too low.
And once again, potential room to play extended minutes, and Karl Anthony Towns currently my most rostered pay up option. As you are running lineups, where did you stand on Karl Anthony Towns relative to his ownership?
In my latest crunch, I have 66% Cat. The field has 48%. So yeah, I'm over the field right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And I imagine I will end up over the field. I don't know if I'm going to end up with 66%, but I imagine I'm probably over the field.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Yeah, we're on the same page there. Super chat from Olrat14. I got tomorrow's paper early. Oh, here we go. He already know. He's got the script. He's got the script. It says Jamal Murray scored more fantasy points than Edwards on DK by 10. Should I trust this paper?
Absolutely not. That paper is bullshit. Burn it. Oh, which gave you that paper?
So yeah. I mean, well, it's a fortune teller. So here's the issue I have with, because still, we have to look at projections here. So I have Anthony Edwards projected better than Jamal Murray. It doesn't mean that Jamal Murray can't outscore him, but if you're just asking me to predict, will Jamal Murray outscore Anthony Edwards by 10? I would say no. I have Anthony Edwards projected for like 1.5 more fantasy points. Yeah.
And we have them projected. They're very close in projection at Stokastic. I mean, if you want to play Jamal Murray, being serious, I think it's totally fine if you want to play Jamal Murray over Ant. If Jamal Murray is shooting like he was in the last game and Ant is not shooting like he was in the last game, or vice versa, that's going to make a huge difference.
And we have a question here. This is from Miami High Life said, never mind. So, okay, never mind. No question. It's a never mind. And then we have one from Sniffs1234. And then, by the way, baseball news. Marlins Guardians postponed due to inclement weather. So if anyone's playing baseball, just a heads up there. Sniffs1234 is a question. Then after this, we'll look at the lineup generator that we have over at Stokastic.com. We'll use that to build out some lineups, and we'll see what that ends up coming up with. And it'll give us a good idea of some of the top players to target. But Sniffs1234 says, any rules for the Celtics guards? So the only rules that I have for today is to not allow more than 3 players from any one team, just because there's no super obvious value plays, and I didn't want to be too loaded up on any individual team. That's it. I've got no lineups allowing more than 3 players from the same team. I didn't do anything to say like, oh, you can't have multiple Celtics guards or anything like that. Any rules that you're setting for today?
Just the cap so far. Maybe I'll think about some other rules as we go, but yeah, currently the only rule I have is a cap. I think I set it at 4, not 3, but yeah, I don't know. Should I set it? Maybe I should set it at 3. I set it at 4 just because it's a short slate, but
I'll tell you why I did 3 instead of 4. When I ran my lineups with 3 compared to 4, there was not a big difference in terms of the projections of my lineups, which to me is kind of an indication like, okay, I go with 3. When I'm willing to go to like 4 or sometimes even 5 players from one team on a really small slate, which I was willing to do last night where there was so much value on isolated spots, a lot of it is dictated for me when I'll run lineups. And if my projected lineups are just so much higher with different caps, I feel like I'm sacrificing too much by being too strict. For today, though, I set it to 3 because there's nothing it's like I feel like I need to get to from any one team in the same way that there was value last night.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any teams where I would want to have 4 necessarily. Let me think about that for a second, because you can also do, I mean, in Fantasy Country, you can do it team specifically as well. It doesn't have to be overall. Yeah, I don't like. I could play because Cat is so cheap. Play Cat, Torian Prince. I should look at all the price tags. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll think about it a little bit. But yeah, I think that makes sense to set it at 3 if it doesn't really drastically change the projections, then you're going to have better correlation.
And now let's go and look at the lineup generator. Jordan, if you wouldn't mind, could you share the screen so Neil and I could see it? We'll build out lineups for FanDuel. We'll build out lineups for DraftKings, and we'll see what the lineup generator ends up spitting out. And like I said, I do think this is a pretty good way to get an idea of who projects best for us and who are some of the best targets relative to ownership. And if you guys want access to the lineup generator, if you've never signed up for it before and you use the link below, you could get access to this for less than $5. And this is going to be really valuable, especially for the postseason where you don't have to worry too much about injuries or late swaps. You could build some lineups out with the lineup generator fairly early in the day and feel pretty decent about some of the results you get here. So let's start with DraftKings. We'll do, like I said, we'll do DraftKings and FanDuel. We'll start with DraftKings, build some tournament lineups out, and let's go balanced for today. No locks, won't lock anybody in. If I had to lock somebody, it would be Karl Anthony Towns, but don't really need to lock anybody. I would have locked Norman Powell last night if we were doing this.
Yep.
So one thing you could do, if you see some lineups you like, you could save them. You see lineups you dislike, you could discard them. You could make up to 20 here, and then you could upload them directly to DraftKings or FanDuel from here. The DraftKings lineups, you're going to want to update to DraftKings, and the FanDuel lineups to FanDuel. And then at the end, you're going to get to this final screen, and it is going to give you the exposures that you got to each individual player. And what is standing out here is the value. DeAndre Hunter, Caris LeVert, these are the two players popping up most meaningfully when we were doing this. And then if you go down here, Robert Williams, Karl Anthony Towns, surprising amount of Jalen Brunson. I was not expecting that much Jalen Brunson.
I don't think I have that much.
Yeah, what do I have of Jalen Brunson? My lineups right now. I
only got 14%.
I do have 23% Jalen Brunson, so that's not too far off from the 37%. I've also got a lot of Mobley in there. Mobley, I don't have quite that much of. But yeah, you'll see a lot of the players that are projecting well as points per dollar options. They're the guys who are popping up most meaningfully. We've got Karl Anthony Towns, 50% there, pretty close to where he's owned by the field. And then if you see any individual lineups where you're like, I don't like this one individual player, you could go in and you can make some swaps to the individual lineup. So these are some of the top looking options for DraftKings. Like I said, we got to scroll back to the top. So DeAndre Hunter, Caris LeVert, Karl Anthony Towns is the most rostered pay-up option. The second most rostered pay-up option, you got to feel good about your chances now tonight, Neil. The two most rostered pay-up options we got here were Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards.
I love that. Yeah, that's how it should be.
There we go. So let's go run it for FanDuel now, Jordan, if you wouldn't mind. We'll go back out. We'll do it for FanDuel. FanDuel time. Let's do for FanDuel, let's do contrarian ones, just because I want to see what's different in terms of some of the players that pop up. Yeah, no locks. No locks. And yeah, save out 20. Look at Jordan going back and forth like he's playing Pong. Save,
he's so
discard,
good at his job.
Discard. Yeah, he's one of the better ones named Jordan Klein. So one thing that's interesting on FanDuel here is you see Nickeil Alexander-Walker is still popping up, even though we're expecting Tour Inference to start. Part of that is just the price point. He's only $4,100 on FanDuel. And what is his ownership for FanDuel? Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Oh, I also, because we're building contrarian lineups. So another reason why that also pops up more meaningfully. But yeah, Nickeil Alexander-Walker projected for 16% ownership. So make some contrarian lineups. We got some very contrarian players. By the way, the recommendation that I would give to you guys if you're using this is to build balanced lineups. I was just curious to see what would pop up if we made some contrarian lineups and who would be some maybe contrarian plays that you guys could play if you got to FanDuel. So based on this, Bruce Brown is actually super popular on FanDuel. He's currently the most popular player in our ownership projections, projected for 40% ownership. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, though, is fairly contrarian. And then some of the other usual suspects that we talked about before, like Karl Anthony Towns is popping up, DeAndre Hunter, Caris LeVert as well. But Bruce Brown is a player who projects much differently on FanDuel relative to DraftKings. So like I said, if you guys are interested in the lineup generator tool that we have, sign up using the link below. You could get it for less than $5. It's going to help you build out some plus EV lineups for the remainder of the basketball season here. So let's get back to your guys' questions, your super chats, and everything else going on here. Next question is from Olrat14. Tomorrow, boy, Olrat's got all the information. Everything's about tomorrow's paper. People still get newspapers
from the future.
It comes back in the future. That's what we found out. The newspapers go away. They come back.
I guess so. Must be.
Do you get the newspaper?
I do not get the newspaper. I get Twitter. Twitter tells me everything I need to know.
All right. I thought you might be a newspaper guy. I had a hunch.
I'm not that old. I'm not EMAC. Come on.
Yeah, I had a hunch. Yeah, EMAC is definitely a newspaper guy.
100%.
Definitely a newspaper guy. Did you get a newspaper growing up? Did your parents used to get
Oh
it?
yeah, of course.
It
Did yours?
Used to be one of my chores. I'd have to go out to the end of the driveway and bring in the newspaper for my dad.
Nice.
Yeah, the New York Post and their ridiculous headlines. So ORAT 14. So this is what was in the newspaper for tomorrow, according to ORAT 14. Tomorrow's paper, Town scores 30. You want Randall? If Karl-Anthony Towns scores 30 real-life points, I want all of him.
Me too. At his price tag, that's like he's going to get some rebounds, assists, etc. So yeah, sign me up for
as for Julius Randle, I have around 10% of him right now, so not something I'm really getting to all that much of. Hard to prioritize that first game.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Fields at 14. Like if Julius Randle was super low owned at 8,200, I would be very interested. But at 14.5%, I'm like, I still like. I don't think I'm going to be far off from the field, but hard to prioritize him when he's getting 15% ownership.
Oh, Olrat's saying fantasy points. If Karl-Anthony Towns scores 30 if I knew right now Karl-Anthony Towns is going to score 30 fantasy points, I wouldn't have him in any lineups.
Yeah, but then would you want Randall? I guess he's asking if you think Cat is going to fail, would you want to play Julius Randle? Is that the question here?
I'd probably just play other guys, right? Because I'm not playing that much Randall right now. If I wasn't playing Cat, I'd probably be getting to more of Tatum, and I'd be getting to more of Jokic before I got to more of Randall. Actually, here's who I'd really, if I knew Cat was going to fail, I'd play a bunch of Gobert.
Yeah. That and Ant as well. I think I mean it could be because they got blown out or they blew out Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go there.
What else did the paper say?
Yeah, tell us more about this paper.
Yeah, I want to know more about the paper.
Because I'm fading it, obviously.
Yeah, I'm fading tomorrow's newspaper as well. But Karl-Anthony Towns, if you tell me he scores 30 fantasy points, these are the 4 players I'd be getting more exposure to. It would be Jason Tatum, Nikola Jokic, Rudy Gobert, and then you mentioned Anthony Edwards as well. I think those are, it would be just from a pivot standpoint, Tatum and Jokic. And then from a who scores better in a scenario where Jokic fails, that's where I'd be looking at Gobert and Edwards.
Yeah, let me give you a gut play, which I just looked at chat, and it looks like chat is also talking about it. So Brian Durkay says, never RJ Barrett, never. At 2.6% ownership, RJ Barrett coming off games in which he's played 31 and 33 minutes, down to $6,000 price tag. It's gross, but at that ownership, I'm definitely going to be above the field. I think that RJ Barrett he has volatility both in his minutes and in his play. He has not been great this year, I know, but like, I don't know. It's not really based on anything other than gut. But when I see RJ Barrett that low owned at a $6,000 price tag, when he's been playing minutes in the 30s, we've seen him in the past as a fantasy monster. Obviously, we're pretty far removed from that, so like you can't put too much on that. But I think that he's at that ownership, I have interest.
The biggest issue with RJ Barrett is that Emmanuel Quickley is better than him, and Tom Thibodeau's kind of started to figure that out down the stretch of the season. He's 2%. Of all the players who are actually going to play legitimate minutes today, he is the lowest owned on the entire slate, though.
Exactly. At 2 point, it's just a matter of ownership. It's not because I think like RJ Barrett is some slam dunk play he's absolutely going to crush. It's just I see RJ Barrett at 6,000 at 2.6% ownership on a 3-game slate. To be clear, this isn't like if this were a large slate, I wouldn't have ended. But on a 3-game slate, that ownership just feels too low to me. And I mean, Emmanuel Quickley, maybe Tom Thibodeau started to figure that. He still played just 23 and 24 minutes in the 2 games in the playoffs so far.
But that was more than he was playing earlier in the year when Barrett was a viable fantasy producer.
I'm just saying, as always, like you need him to be playing well. Of course, he's more likely to play more minutes if he's playing well. But like if you're playing him, that's kind of what you're counting on anyway. Yeah,
and once again, I know you're talking about it relative to ownership, and I'm not going to push. He's 2.6% owned, right? That's about as low owned as anybody is going to get on these slates that's playing actual substantial minutes. So from that standpoint, I definitely don't have any kind of issue with it. We've got a question in our Discord channel from Cubby Bear Q3. And by the way, Celtics starting lineup, nothing unexpected. Smart, White, Brown, Tatum, Horford. The reason I bring it up is because he just asked us a question about Time Lord, Robert Williams. He wants to know thoughts on getting overweight to the field on Robert Williams. I'm currently overweight to the field on Robert Williams. I have no issue with that at all.
Yeah, I am currently have 61%. I'm probably going to cut back a little bit more from that. I think I already cut down his projection slightly and I'm still at 61. No, I didn't. Okay. So that's why I'm still getting so much Robert Williams. But yeah, the field's at 24.5%. I'm absolutely going to be above the field there.
Yeah. And any concerns with, I know this has come up a lot over the course of the playoffs, but any concerns from you about playing Horford and Robert Williams in the same lineup?
I don't think so. I think I'm willing to do it.
All right. So there we go. Hopefully that helps you build out your lineups there, Cubby Bear. And something else too, because a lot of people might say, oh, look, he isn't starting. He hasn't been starting. It wasn't really anticipated that he would. There's still upside in Robert Williams. Very, very volatile player, to be sure. But I do definitely think there's upside. And we've seen some of that upside in the playoffs. Now let's check to see if there was any super chats, because yeah, one just came in. Tim Strong, Tim with 2 M's. That's how he gets so strong. Extra consonants in his name.
That's right.
Favorite forward play 3,800 or under on DK?
Probably going to be, I think Prince is in that. Let me double check though.
Favorite forward play 3,800 or under. Forward 3,800. Yeah, it's Taurean Prince.
Yep. Pretty easily for me, I think. I also gave him a boost to the projection, but yeah, it's Prince.
So I want to go back talking about some of the pay up options. And Neil, if you're paying up, do you see a way to be contrarian? Is there a pay up option that you like that the field maybe isn't all that high
on? I'm right even with the field on Donovan Mitchell. I mean,
okay.
There's nobody that's, I guess, Trae Young. I am going to be above the field on Trae Young. I know he hasn't been great, but he's coming in at 17.5% ownership. He's at 8,400. He's at home now. I think that there are reasons to think Trae Young can pay off this price tag and more. Just because he's been bad, I'm not going to be fading him. So yeah, I'd say probably that is where I'm going the heaviest over the field. And I'm still getting to under 30%. So it's not like I'm slamming in Trae Young here, but 17.5% definitely interesting to me.
Yeah, and I am about to up my exposure to Taurean Prince a little bit because I do want to get more of him than what I have. I think I should be playing a little bit more Taurean Prince because I feel like even though it didn't work out last time, I think you were on the right page. And I do think he's a pretty good differentiator of some of the plays that we do have for cheap that are really popular today. So I'm going to update that right now to make sure that I get more of him, do one final run of lineups before we get to lock. And on the low end, we've talked about some of the chalky value options. And I know we talked a little bit about Taurean Prince is a little bit more contrarian. And I know you brought up RJ Barrett in the mid-range. Are there any other value plays that you're seeing maybe in our boom bust tool that are really contrarian that you think warrant some consideration to be overweight to the field too?
Yeah, let me refresh our boom bust tool because that's a good idea. I should take a look at that.
And we did get an ownership update a couple minutes ago as well.
Nice. Okay. Are we thinking, did you say just value plays or just contrarian plays overall?
Yeah, contrarian value play.
Yeah, so I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is currently our top leverage play on the entire slate. He's 3,900. We have him in for just 4% ownership with a 15% chance of being optimal. It's hard for me because I do think that Taurean Prince is a lot more likely to play more minutes in this game than he did in the last one. But that's at least, kind of interesting if he's coming in at 4% ownership. Clearly, the same thing could happen. The Timberwolves also, that's one of the bigger risks to me with Taurean Prince is the Timberwolves played pretty well with him sidelined. Like they kept it competitive for most of the second half. So there's some risk that like they remember, like we played well without this guy, even though he started the last game. There's some risk that they go back to Nickeil Alexander-Walker just because he, played fairly well. They did fairly well with him in there. So yeah, I think that he's an interesting enough play. I still prefer, I'm probably gonna be playing more Prince, but I think that's a pretty interesting play at 4%. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to Christian Brown.
And by the way, somebody just asked us, Supac double OP in Discord asked Taurean Prince and Nickeil Alexander-Walker for small forward on FanDuel. I have to go towards Taurean Prince there. I know that Nickeil Alexander-Walker projects well in the boom bust tool, but I do think we're going to see more minutes for Taurean Prince as long as he could avoid foul trouble today.
Yeah, same page.
And then the Black Mamba 81 wants us to give him the top 5 players that we are getting to for the slate. So I just ran a new set of lineups for the updated ownership that we have. And I could now answer this. So let's see. My most rostered players now, considering the new ownership, I currently have Karl-Anthony Towns, Caris LeVert, Robert Williams, DeAndre Hunter, Nikola Jokic ended up coming up as my 5 most rostered players. I had to get to a bunch more Taurean Prince now that I updated lineup. So Taurean Prince, not one of my most rostered players, but is one of my more rostered forwards and one of my more rostered value plays, even if he doesn't come up in my top 5 overall most rostered. For yourself, Neil, who is it that you're getting the most exposure to as your top 5 most rostered players per the question from the Black Mamba?
Currently, that would be Karl-Anthony Towns, DeAndre Hunter, Caris LeVert, Robert Williams, Jamal Murray, and then Taurean Prince 6th.
Who is a player that you are not getting that much of that concerns you?
I'm underweight to the field on Tatum. Tatum coming in at 34%. I have 23%. That obviously worries me a little bit. He's 9,900. It's a very reasonable price tag on Tatum. It's just that, those mid-range prices are so juicy that it's hard for me to really want to go all the way up to Tatum. But it definitely concerns me that I'm pretty well, 11% under the field there. KCP, I'm getting 9% currently. The field's at 29%. Definitely worries me. If he gets hot shooting, that could be trouble for me. But I don't think I'm going to force myself to get up to the field there. So that's another kind of scary one. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the 2 that stand out to me. How about you?
Donovan Mitchell. I'm not getting to a ton of him, and I've been pretty high on him in the playoffs. He isn't projected for a ton of ownership, 16% in the most recent run, but I did come in underweight to that number. There's an obvious ceiling there. So once again, it's something that worries me, but it's just not a game I'm prioritizing that first one of the slate. So I did not get to all that much of him.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. So I'm getting to 20%. I'm getting a little bit above the field. So I guess it doesn't apply for me because I am above the field. But yeah, I think Donovan Mitchell very interesting at 15%. That's one that after I gave the answer of Trae Young as like my favorite contrarian pay up option, I sort of second guessed myself. Like, well, Donovan Mitchell's actually getting even lower ownership, but he's more expensive. So I think I can stick with Trae Young there.
Yeah, and the player that I am getting the most to from the high end, I mentioned that one is Karl-Anthony Towns for me, the other one Nikola Jokic. So Jokic, I'm happy I was able to find a way to get overweight to the field on. What helped me, Neil, was upping Taurean Prince. As I upped Taurean Prince, gave me more salary savings and enabled me to get some more of Nikola Jokic. See if we have any more questions in here. If not, we got some super chats in right now. One is from Jay. He wants to know top 5 projected players for the late 2-game slate. Yeah, so let me look at the 2-game slate. 2-game slate, and let me run out some. I'll just build some lineups really quick in Fantasy Cruncher for the 2-game slate and let you know what it is that I got to the most. I assume that it is going to be yeah, here we go. All right. So players I got to the most, running lineups for the late 2-game slate, which is not really all that late because the games start 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. No real West Coast game. But the players I got to the most were Caris LeVert, Karl-Anthony Towns, Mike Conley, Taurean Prince, and Darius Garland for the 2-game slate. Is there anybody, if you just look through our projections, that stands out for the 2-game slate that maybe would pop up more for you or become more of a priority than the full 3-game slate?
Yeah, let me look. So then we're missing out on the Boston Atlanta game then. So probably some of these wings. My guess would be I'm getting to a good amount of the Atlanta wings still. So like I'm getting to, well, I guess not just forward. So I'm getting to a good amount of DeAndre Hunter, John Collins. So I imagine some of that ownership would pivot somewhere else. I mean, you already mentioned Caris LeVert probably gets even more of it than. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Let's see. Probably KCP. I'd probably be getting to a little bit more KCP than I am in a 3-game slate at 4,200. Bruce Brown also, I'm under the field on both of those, Bruce Brown and KCP. I'd probably be getting to more of them if I didn't have the option of the Hawks forwards.
Yeah, I'm also underweight to Bruce Brown on the full slate. Not something I ended up getting to in many lineups. Next super chat here is from James Magruder. Best played each position for DK Cash, and thank you. Sure. So let me go back to the full slate here. And who was I getting the most of at each position? All right. So if we're talking point guard, the player I'd consider to be the best cash game option is Mike Conley. Shooting guard, Karis LeVert. Small forward, DeAndre Hunter. Power forward, Karl Anthony Towns. And then center, center is also Cat. All right, so here's how I'll make point guard. I'll say Mike Conley. Shooting guard, Karis LeVert. Small forward, I'll say Taurean Prince. Power forward, I'll go DeAndre Hunter. Then center, Karl Anthony Towns, and that fills out one player at each position there. And the next super chat, thought I just saw another one come in. Maybe not. Yeah, here we go. Avi Schreier wants us to show the ownership for FanDuel. Yes, we could do that for sure. And I'll read it off. All right, there we go. So we got Jordan Klein pulling it up on screen, and I'm also going to go through some of the ownerships here and players who are most highly projected. Pretty flat ownership for today's 3-game slate on FanDuel. Not a single player north of 40% owned, and not even that many players north of 30%. We've got Mike Conley is the most popular player on the entire FanDuel slate at 38% ownership. We've got DeAndre Hunter, 37%, Karis LeVert, 34%, Garland, 33%, Kyle Anderson, 33%, Bruce Brown, 31%, Evan Mobley, 31%, KCP, 30%, and that does it for all the players north of 30% owned. So really flat ownership on FanDuel for this slate. So it should be interesting there. You don't have to worry too much about any kind of crazy chalk. So Abby, hopefully that helps you with your lineups over there. Also, Neil, if you wouldn't mind, can you pull up the boom bust tool for FanDuel? And
yes, I can.
Just curious, because Abby asked for the ownership there, but now it's also who is the most positively and negatively leveraged players on FanDuel in our boom bust tool.
Interesting. So it's also Nickeil Alexander-Walker on FanDuel. We've got him at 17% ownership, 34% chance to be an optimal. He is the most positively leveraged by kind of a good margin at 4,100 on FanDuel. Evan Mobley would be number 2. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker has a 17% positive leverage score. Evan Mobley, number 2, has a 7.7% with a 30.8% ownership, 38.5% chance to be an optimal. So those are our 2 best in terms of positive leverage. We actually have Rudy Gobert with the most negative leverage on FanDuel, which, okay, 16.8% projected ownership, 9.5% chance to be an optimal. Surprises me a little bit because he's 7,400, obviously gets points for blocks. He hasn't been great with blocks this year, so maybe that's why. But yeah, negative leverage on Rudy on FanDuel.
All right, we got a super chat here from Corey Bomber trying to get some clarification, though, because he has Murray or Murray on DK. So I guess he means
Jamal or
Jamal
DeJounte.
and DeJounte Murray. But I'm just making sure he didn't accidentally type the same player twice. It could just be Jamal Murray versus DeJounte Murray, but just double checking. If it's just Jamal Murray versus DeJounte Murray, the answer for me is Jamal Murray. But I also think there's a chance that he meant to type somebody else and Murray and accidentally said Murray twice.
Oh, yeah, maybe. R. Stanley, you asked me who, if I've ever met Purple Prince in Minneapolis. I just assumed you were talking about somebody who's living. Yeah, I do know who Prince is. Yes, but no, I never did meet Prince.
You guys aren't friends. Everybody in Minnesota isn't friends with each other.
So he actually, one of my dad's cousin, or my second cousin once removed. I don't know what that makes. Maybe my dad's second cousin. I met him. So he was actually a professor at my law school. I met him, had lunch with him once, and I learned that they went to high school together. He went to the same high school as Prince. And what he told me is they were picked on by the same people in high school.
Oh, look at that.
So there's my connection to Prince.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Jordan Klein finds this interesting story. I went to high school. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Tyus Jones or Trey Jones?
Yeah, I was going to say you went to high school with some famous people as well.
I did. I went to,
in case people didn't know.
Also Pete from Mad Men. I think his name was
really?
Pete.
So that's,
yeah.
For me, that's a cool one. He was
Jordan Klein is loving this.
Not only was he Pete from Mad Men, but he was also Scarecrow in some DC show. I forget what it's called, but he played Scarecrow. He's a really good actor. I like him a lot.
Let me make sure it's the right guy, that I have the right name. I think it's Pete.
Could just
yes, it is. It is Pete. Yes.
So did anybody who isn't famous go to your high school?
Not that I know of. Yeah, we're all pretty much famous.
Interesting.
Me being the most famous, of course.
Interesting. Yeah, we got in here Obi-Wan saying Neil is name dropping. So
Big time.
before we get to lock, I also want to touch on No House Advantage, who is the sponsor of today's show. If you guys haven't signed up there, use the link below in the description box. You will get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit when you sign up over at No House Advantage. And I want to pull up our projections for the NBA Pick'em Pro, which is a tool we have that has projections for Prize Picks, Underdog, and No House Advantage. And if you guys are playing on any of these sites, you want to check out the projections we have in there, because really useful tool to find some of the best value. As of right now, these are our top projected player props over on NHA. The top 3 are Emmanuel Quickly under 1.5 threes, Onyeka Okongwu under 6.5 rebounds, and Sadiq Bey under 8.5 points. So if you guys are building out a player card over on No House Advantage, those are some ones you should be checking out, some things to take advantage of. How are you doing on your lineups, by the way, Neil? Is this going to be another one you're running at crunch 30 seconds before the slate?
Probably. Most slates are. Elevated Black Voice says the fact that these guys consider themselves famous is comedy in itself. Yeah, Greg and I definitely think of ourselves as super famous.
Yeah, and to be clear, though, Neil isn't saying he's as famous as Prince or Trey Jones. It's just he's like slightly behind them.
Slightly, just like a little bit.
Yeah. He's not saying he's more famous than Prince. He's just like in the ballpark.
That's fair, right?
Yeah, I don't know what this guy. I mean, if Prince is a 10 out of 10 in terms of fame, what is Neil on a scale of 1 to 10?
9.8 probably.
Yeah, he's the most famous Brahmas fan, most likely.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can't think of a single other. I might be the only Brahmas fan.
The most famous Brahmas fan.
That's
Some
right.
more super chats. D Buff, DK question Jaylen Brown and Prince. See, now you get confused. Does he mean Torian Prince, or does he mean Prince?
Good point. Now it is a little bit confusing now. I'd go with Prince either way. I don't remember who else he said.
Jaylen Brown and Torian Prince, or Jalen Brunson and Time Lord.
I like Jaylen Brown and Torian Prince, to be honest. I think that's the way I go with that one.
Yeah, makes sense. I'll answer that way as well. It's hard because I like Torian Prince. I like Time Lord today, but I'm not super high on Jaylen Brown or Jalen Brunson. But yeah, I'll go with you. Jaylen Brown and Torian Prince. Abby Schreier says Ricky Williams went to my high school. High AF. Yeah, Ricky Williams was is he still involved in like marijuana business or something?
Man, I feel like I heard something from Ricky Williams like within the past 2 years, but I cannot remember what it was.
And people don't know this about Ricky Williams. He went to high school with Neil. It doesn't get talked about very often.
Yeah,
but
all famous people.
Yeah. He was an okay football player in Neil's high school. Neil did block for him as an offensive lineman.
That's right.
Yeah, but yeah, Ricky Williams was decent at football in his own right, just like Neil was. James Magruder, best 4,900 player on DK utility who is not LeVert or Prince. So the price point is 4,900 or under. Let's see, 4,900 or under.
And it can't be LeVert and can't be Robert Williams.
Yeah, for sure, Robert Williams. If you already have Robert Williams, then John Collins for me.
DeAndre Hunter up there as well.
Didn't he say which players did he say he couldn't be though? Oh, he said it can't be LeVert or Prince. Either way, the answer for me is Robert Williams. Yeah, Robert Williams. I would have DeAndre Hunter over John Collins though. Let's go into Discord and see if there's any questions in here, making sure that we don't miss on anything. And King Yusuf wants to know thoughts on Derek White tonight. Price feels high, but he can pay off. Yeah, Derek White's outplayed Trae Young in this series, which is going to be problematic for the Atlanta Hawks if they want to win. Let's see, where am I on Derek White? I don't think I have very much Derek White. Yeah, I'm underweight to the field on Derek White. Derek White's
18%.
Yeah, Derek White's projected for nearly 30% ownership, and I'm around 20. So Derek White, I do agree with you that there's upside there. I just think he's a little bit too popular. A little bit too popular for me. Einsteinium, thoughts on Sadiq Bey on DraftKings? I don't have exposure to Sadiq Bey.
I think he's an interesting. So I also do not have any exposure to him currently. That might be my last minute update. I do think at 4.5% ownership, he's at least somewhat interesting. He played 24 minutes in game one, dropped down to 15 last game. But I think if the game script goes right, like I think there's a lot of volatility in the wings and I guess power in the forwards in general with that line. I think there is enough volatility that at 4.5% ownership, I'm probably going to end up above the field here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any exposure to him, so I can't recommend him. But
I don't either right now, and I'm running a new crunch at 559 once again.
See what ends up happening. Are you going to get it in on time?
That's the question. So I might have some, I might have none. I have 12% now.
All right. And now the sweat. Will you upload it before it locks?
So if he does well tonight, thank you for reminding me that I was actually going to bring him up like a little while ago, and then I didn't. Thank you for reminding me, because I had 0%. Or I'll screw you if he doesn't do well.
Final super chat, and then we are going to be done for the night. Neil, you have very comforting energy. I'm really growing to love the Hebrew Hammer and Flannel God duo. Nice.
Thank you.
I'm the Hebrew Hammer. You're the Flannel God.
Yeah.
Jordan is Jordan Klein. He's the producer. So
That's
guys,
right.
Thank you very much for sticking around and watching the show. We are now at lock. If you haven't done it yet, do us a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm going to be on live before lock, I believe, with Rinpack tomorrow. Afternoon show. We've got an early locking NBA slate. So go check that out tomorrow. Other than that, guys, have a great weekend.